With video games nowadays, we've come a long way. We have graphics so realistic that you'd think you were watching a live-action movie. But what about the days when these graphics were the best that you'd ever seen? It may not look like much now, but the Nintendo 64 revolutionized the way 3D games were made. Some games better than others, but that's what I'll be taking a look at today. So now for the rules. Only one game per franchise, only games I played can be on this list, and the game has to be made only for the Nintendo 64. But if it came out later as a remake for another system, I'll still count it. I should also note that a couple of games from my top 20 games of all time countdown are going to be on here, so if it looks a little repetitive, that's why. This is Krav Maga 15's top 10 Nintendo 64 games. We're starting off today's list with one of the best Star Wars games to date, Shadows of the Empire. This storyline takes place in between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It also introduces new characters such as Dash Rendar and the evil Prince... I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. The only thing I wish there was more of was seeing a little more connection between the movies, such as near the end showing what leads up to Return of the Jedi. However, we do get to reenact one of the coolest scenes in The Empire Strikes Back, the Battle of Hoth. As long as we're not fighting some big giant robot camels, it'll be fine.
Ah, Jim. Robot camels.
It still baffles me to this day how the crap this game exists. By no means is it a bad game, but Nintendo is known for family-friendly fun, not foul-mouthed drunken squirrels, singing piles of shit, or this. This is probably the only Nintendo 64 game that has a warning on the box pretty much saying, "Do not play this, kids," even though deep down you know that you played it over at a cool friend's house and watched episodes of South Park.
Hey, I'm a cop, and you will respect my authority!
There were a ton of first-person shooters developed for the Nintendo 64, like Perfect Dark and Turok, but GoldenEye hit it out of the ballpark. With that being said though, it hasn't really aged well as far as control-wise. When I go back to playing this game, it feels weird pressing the C buttons rather than having a right analog stick to move the cameras around. Ah well, besides that, still a really fun game, especially having the 4-player split-screen competitive mode. Except when somebody you know was playing as Oddjob.
Hey, not gonna lie, dick move guys, dick move.
I could have easily put Pokemon Stadium on here, but when I think back about memories of playing Pokemon games on my N64, Pokemon Snap just brings back so many fond memories. Now don't get me wrong, Pokemon Stadium is a great game, but aside from the mini-games and being able to see your Pokemon in 3D, what did Pokemon Stadium really bring to the table that was new? Pokemon Snap was a breath of fresh air, and while all you really did was just take pictures of Pokemon, it was still really fun and enjoyable, especially revisiting levels and discovering new Pokemon that you didn't know were there before.
Holy shit! Oh my god, it's a fucking Magikarp! Magikarp!
Sorry Mario Kart fans, I'm gonna have to go with Diddy Kong Racing on this one. For once, we have a racing game that kind of has its own adventure and story mode. Did it make sense? Not really, but it was really fun. You have your choice of 3 different vehicles, your regular car, a hovercraft, and an airplane. And not only did you have regular races, you also had boss races, which were insane. I mean, one of them you raced a freaking dragon!
Me and you and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be, the only one for me is you.
I remember seeing the commercial for this game for the first time, probably one of my favorite commercials ever. And it's for one of the best games ever. Super Smash Bros. Was the first fighting game of its kind, mascots from the major Nintendo franchises duking it out. But you didn't have a health bar. Instead, you have to get your opponent's percentage up and knock them off the screen. Granted, we have the new versions like the one for Wii U and 3DS, but it's always fun to play the game that started it all. You knew you'd be seeing this one on the list somewhere. This is where it all started. Super Mario 64 is possibly one of the best Mario games to date. It also was the basis for most 3D Mario games as well, such as Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. The story really hasn't changed much, does it ever? Except rather than going from level to level, you're given a 3D environment to explore and discover new levels while collecting stars to unlock new levels and areas of the castle. And while I don't think it's the best Bowser fight ever, smashing Bowser into a bomb for the first time was so satisfying.
Boom, headshot!
Although it got its start on the Super Nintendo, Star Fox 64 took the original Star Fox formula and almost perfected it, and added some new stuff, such as 2 new vehicles to pilot, new worlds to explore, and awesome new characters such as Star Wolf.
Can't let you do that, Star Fox.
Another interesting thing about Star Fox 64 was the branching paths. If you completed certain objectives in the level, you got to go an alternative route. And of course, if we didn't have this game, we wouldn't have the infamous...
Do a barrel roll!
Alright, flame shields up! Yes, you are seeing this correctly. Ocarina of Time is not number 1. I understand almost every Nintendo 64 top 10 list has this game as its number 1, but please remember, this is my opinion. If I didn't enjoy this game as much as I do, I wouldn't have put it this high on the list in the first place. Anyway, Ocarina of Time, regarded as the best Legend of Zelda game ever made. This is where we got our first true story for Legend of Zelda. Okay, A Link to the Past had one, but in this it seemed more grand, more epic, more adventurous. It felt like you were really exploring a new world. Probably one of the most memorable moments was taking the Master Sword for the first time, becoming adult Link and traveling 7 years into the future. I've talked about this game plenty of times on previous top 10 countdowns, so a good bit of you knew that this was going to be my number 1. Banjo Kazooie. Everything about this game was almost pure perfection. I say almost because Rusty Bucket Bass sucks. Great controls, fantastic music, entertaining storyline, amazing levels to explore, and so much more. Now I understand this type of game isn't everybody's cup of tea. We all have our own type of games that we favor over others. At the end of the day though, it's the games for this system that we remember playing as kids that we truly hold dear to our hearts. Some might call this nostalgia blindness, but I see it as remembering one's roots and how you develop as a gamer. Banjo Kazooie was the main reason I loved playing my Nintendo 64, and that's why Banjo Kazooie is my number 1 Nintendo 64 game. I'm Crow of Murder 15, and now I'm going to go try to wash my brain of the horrendous sequel that's known as Nuts and Bolts. JonTron, take it away.
Holy shit! We'll always love you! I can't believe you did this to me! Oh!